All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Wrenching Podcast. I'll be honest with you guys, I don't know how much time I have for this one. I'm currently on hold at work, so this might be quick. I'm going to try to make this quick. I just felt really driven to sit here and talk about how sometimes God pulls a good thing away to give us something better. This message was given at church about a month ago now. And I was struggling in a relationship. The thing is, the struggle wasn't fighting. It wasn't money problems. It was one thing that we just could not meet eye to eye on. No matter what way we worked around it, no matter what we thought we could agree on to get around it, we just couldn't make it work. And so the week before that, the message was, keep trying, keep going. God's going to handle it, and you just have to keep moving forward. And so, again, thinking about the relationship, I'm like, okay, I just have to put aside how I feel and move forward. And so I tried. The next week it was, let it go. And here's the thing is that this relationship met a lot of criterias that were so good in my life, and I feel like I poured back just as much to the other person. But the thing was that I wasn't ready for a family. I wasn't ready for kids. I wasn't ready to get married. I'm still building. If you haven't watched the movie Lamborghini, it shows the man that created Lamborghini. He had this image to build. And he lost friends, he lost family, he lost up to his own son at one point when he wanted to pass it on to his son. His son denied it. He said, I don't want anything to do with your company. But at the end of the movie, he is so pleased by the work he has done. I don't want that necessarily. I want to put a life together that I can give the future family a better life than what I had. Right now I feel like I'm not too far ahead. Right now I feel like I still have a lot of things in my life that I need to do before I can get there. And so, not prepared to take that next step forward, God said, you know what? If you guys aren't going to be obedient, and if you guys are going to live outside of, again, in marriage, and he was talking to us both separately. When we finally came together and said, this is how we feel, it was like, okay, we've been feeling the exact same thing. We have not talked about this. There's only one explanation. God gave us opportunity to get married. That pressure started building up the last 6 months. We both realized it just wasn't going to happen. We were going to prolong that obedience further down the road. And that's just the thing that stood out to me the most. Delayed obedience is still disobedience. We were living in sin. We were disobedient. Eventually the time ran out. And God said, I needed you to have made that decision already. Because if you make it later, it won't align with everything that I have for you in a timely manner. I hold a lot of the blame on myself. Because as a man, I'm the one to initiate that. But again, I wasn't ready. Multiple conversations with God. Multiple moments where the setting wasn't perfect. But instead of trusting in His plan, I took control of my situation. And it ended up leading to a more painful situation. I don't think neither of us expected this. We got along great. Never fought about money. Had little arguments here and there, some disagreements. I mean, like usual. I think every relationship does and will. I don't think that the next relationship won't have any problems either. But this one was a really good representation of what a healthy relationship looks like. And it gave me a foundation. It gave me a standard to set for the next relationship. And I think that was the biggest lesson learned there. Was that when I'm outside obedience, of God, He will still use the disobedience for a lesson. But I may not like the outcome that it comes with. I may not like the consequence to the decisions that I made. Maybe at one point He allowed the relationship to be the way it was, because He needed us both to grow. At the beginning of the relationship, it was really unstable. There was no structure. On either side, we've both learned so much. And God really worked in this relationship. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why it's so hard to let go of it. Not that God is departing from each of us. I believe that He is getting closer to both of us separately, because now we need it. We were codependent on one other person, but we never brought God into covenant with the relationship, and that is marriage. See, one thing that I hated was my parents, both of my parents, and then people here and there. Oh, your guys' marriage, your husband, your wife, you guys are married, you live together. No. I always hated that. I always hated that pressure of that being put on me, that being put on us, when that was false. That was a huge lie that I didn't want either side to believe. Because marriage is not just what you call it. It is your relationship with the other person in covenant with God. And it was almost like mocking marriage, which is God's creation. And I hated it. I hated being told that I was a married man, because that wasn't the truth. And I think it was right for me to judge that comment, those comments. I think it is better to understand and accept when you are in something wrong, rather than to mask it and say, yes, it is something that is not. When you start masking things, it just gets uglier. By the time you have to uncover it, it's a complete mess. That is why when people claim they have worked through their trauma, but really haven't, and they mask it with anger or some kind of emotion, their fruits will show how they actually are living. And if they've actually worked through traumas, if they've actually forgiven people for their traumas, their fruit will show. You don't even have to peel back the layers, because the ugly will just start showing to the surface. You get angry, bitter, depressing, lonely people. So what happens when you start putting the label on something that God did not agree to? When somebody else does it for you, you start masking it. You mask it instead of letting it be what it actually is and dealing with what it actually is. And we started having an outside perspective mask that. Again, let us accept and let us be what it actually is. Don't try and mask it. I hated that so much. Just masking it. Yes, this is what you are. This is what you are. Well, this is what we consider it. Okay, that's what you consider it. That's not what I consider it, because that's not what God considers. I prefer to say that I was living outside of God's will than to mask it and say, you know what, this is what I think is right, what I think is marriage, what I think is proper. I think I prefer to accept that I am wrong, that I am doing the wrong thing, instead of having to mask it. And then when somebody else comes in and then they try to mask it, like, again, it's not okay. And I think it was just happening too much. And again, maybe it's just another reason for God to be like, okay, you guys can't move forward and actually make it that. If you guys are still talking about holding this off, then maybe this isn't it. Again, I think He just had a bigger calling, and things needed to happen within a certain time, and then our time ran out. And so He told us both, that's it. You need to move forward. I gave you enough time. I gave you enough resources. I showed up enough for you to trust me. You're out of time. And so a relationship that had basically no problems, something that was so good, that is so hard to let go of, God had to remove out of each of our lives because we were outside of obedience. It was a good thing. It was a really good thing. But it was a really bad thing in God's eyes. And again, I believe that there was a time where He allowed it. I believe that there was a time where He said, you both need this. For what I want to do with you two, you both need this time. Eventually, you have to trust me. And we never got to that. Okay, so we went from on hold to go home. So I got more time with you guys. Here's the thing, is when you make mockery of what God created, and that wasn't my intention. My intention was not to mock marriage. I don't think that was the intention of either of us. Outside of the will of God looked like living together, sleeping in the same bed, everything that happened in between, shared living expenses, shared experiences together. And so yes, from an outside, that's why everybody was like, well, you're basically married, so we'll just call it that. Again, that's outside of the will of God. And like I said, I think to an extent, He allowed it. He needed that to happen because we both had a lot of growing up to do, and we weren't ready for even that commitment. We weren't even ready for the relationship, and He changed us both. But I think it got to a point where, again, it's like, you guys are ready for that. And I need you to make that next move, because if not, you're going to mess with my timing. I don't see in the spirit very well, but sometimes I do see some things. And here's what I saw. I saw two very clear paths. One, I leave. I hold a lot of the guilt for really almost like pushing her away. Basically pulling the rug out from under her. Because that's just what the way the relationship felt, or almost was built. Two, she walks away. I still feel bad, but not as bad as pulling the rug out from under her. Those two options stood out. Eventually, through a conversation with the third party, it was the third option that, again, just did not make sense and never hit me. And the more you think about it, the uglier it got. Is that we keep disobeying God. We keep at the relationship. We keep trying to continue making it work. Again, outside of the will of God. Selfishly, we do what we want just to kind of work around that one misagreement that we couldn't align on. But God wasn't going to honor that anymore. Because yes, the flesh still cared about one another. But the substance behind the relationship and why everything was working for the both of us would not be in agreement anymore. I would continue working, doing my own thing, but again, committed to one person until I was ready to move forward. Outside of the will of God, in sin, she would continue with what she was doing as well. Committed to a relationship that was outside of the will of God, in sin. And this problem that we were facing probably would have grown bigger. It probably would have hurt more. And it was getting to a point where that's just what was going to happen. Just outside of the will of God. And again, seeing this almost in the spirit, I saw three paths. The first two paths diverge. They just Y and they split. They don't cross, they don't come back. They don't stay together. One goes one way, the other one goes a complete opposite way. Painful. But the ugliest one was the one that kept going straight. It just led to darkness. I don't know how else to explain it. I can just see that the path was not very long. The path that we were on right now was not very long. It just led to darkness. Again, I think for an extent, God honored the relationship. Once we did not want to continue and commit and come into covenant with God, he would not honor that anymore. And I think that's what he had been asking for about that last year. And if we continued the way that we were, it was not going to last very long either way. And it was just going to get dark. I don't even think that if we wanted to change that now, it would make sense, because it just felt like God's timing had ran out. It just felt like God no longer wanted to allow the relationship. There was a time that he gave us to make that commitment, and we did not. Here's another point that was really hard, is that now I have to ask this person for forgiveness. I have to apologize to this person for holding them in sin. I have to apologize for a relationship that didn't lead nowhere, but didn't fulfill the promise that you would expect out of a relationship. Again, that was marriage. I have to apologize for where I lacked. I have to apologize for not having the right answer to this one problem that, again, I don't think it was the problem that split us up. I think if we would have been obedient, God would have changed whatever needed to be changed. But it required that covenant with him in marriage. And so, because I did not want to make that commitment, I have to apologize. In a way, it's almost like I led them on. I hope she finds someone better. Better is subjective. Better depends on who you're talking to. For her, better is maybe not more money. Maybe not more success. Maybe not more leverage. But maybe somebody that's ready to slow down and hold and have a family. That is where I lacked. I was not ready for that. And so I hope that she does find somebody that will do better in that area. Again, I think in all other areas we both grew and we both did great. And we got along great. But in this one area that mattered, we couldn't come to an agreement. We couldn't see eye to eye. And again, I think God was no longer going to help us with that issue because we had not made that commitment of marriage. I now believe that with that covenant with God in marriage, it almost granted God access to fix those things. I think we both prayed for that to change on both sides. I know I did. But it almost doesn't make sense to fix that if the commitment isn't there. If that commitment was there, if that covenant with God was there, then it's like, okay, sure, yeah, you guys are in this. You want that fixed? I got you. But in this case, it was, wait. You want me to fix this problem, but you won't bring me into agreement, into your relationship. Like, I've given you guys everything else. You guys don't have a problem with anything else. You don't have a money problem. You don't have an emotion towards each other problem. You don't have a cheating problem. You don't have a gluttony problem. You don't have a one person is taking advantage of the other problem. You have a commitment to the family problem. One's not ready, and maybe the other one is. This relationship has been one of the best things I've ever had in my life. It's been one of the biggest blessings. Yet it was one thing that I was not willing to accept for my life. I'm not ready to be a parent. I still feel like I have a lot to build. For the life that I want to give, I still feel like I have a lot to build. This will be one of the biggest and most monumental lessons of my life. Not only did I live in sin for so long, but I lost my best friend. I lost the person that I would enjoy coming home to. Soul ties are real. I lost a huge part of me. I felt that once she left. And that's the thing, is that you never realize what you are going to lose until it's gone. You never realize how big that thing is until it's actually gone. But even still, I don't think I could commit to the family. Even still, sitting here, thinking about everything, thinking about how well everything was, thinking about how much I actually lost. I don't know what it is, but I cannot commit to the family. I don't know if that's something that needs worked on. I don't know if that's a lesson that I have to learn. I don't know what that looks like at all. I don't understand why, even still looking back, when I want things to change and go back to the way they were, I can't just say, yeah, I'll do the family thing. No, I still can't. It's like I want the relationship back, but I'm still not ready for that family. Again, I don't think I could see in the spirit very much. But once we did agree to be obedient, at least in this, it's like I could understand that heaven was heartbroken. Because we much rather chose that it was easier to move on from God's blessing than to live in obedience. It's almost like I understood that. And again, I couldn't see that. I couldn't understand that before that decision was made. I can't say if that's for every relationship. I can't say that those relationships that are hard to let go of don't have that, because I feel like they might. I feel like those relationships that are really hard to let go of almost have this exact same formula. I never thought I'd end a relationship on good terms, and especially one that I didn't want to let go of. Especially one with basically no problems. But we still chose that. We both agreed that that was the best thing. And I don't know, again, I just understood that heaven was heartbroken. I'm sure if we could all go back, we would like to change something within ourselves, so that we don't have to live through these situations. I would love to go back and figure out how I could fix that. How I could just get myself to commit. How I could just tell myself how much it would actually hurt. But I can't. What I can do is carry the lessons on into the next relationship. Move a little bit slower. Know that I have to let God work in the relationship again. And this time wait for a relationship that God puts on my lap, because that's another thing, is that it was a relationship that started outside of the will of God. That, again, I think God allowed for a time being. It's funny because that last weekend that we went to church together, it's almost like God gave the pastor the message for the both of us. And I bump her elbow and I'm like, is he calling us out right now? And she just laughs. Because there's no way that the pastor would know what we were going through. This was a pastor from a visited church. He didn't know who we are, didn't know our name, didn't know we existed, never even met him. He just showed up to give a message. And towards the end, he said,
we're going to get ready to worship together in just a moment, but what I want to do is just pray for one more group of people today that I really felt led to pray for, and that's those of you that may be going through a season of change, like we talked about, a season of transition, maybe a stage of life change. Maybe it is that you're, getting your first job, you're moving out of the house, you're graduating. Maybe it's that your kids are leaving. Maybe it's that you're getting married. Maybe it's that you're having your first children. Whatever it might be, I would just love to pray for you. If that's you, would you just be bold enough just to raise your hand and say, yeah, we're going through some change. It's causing a little anxiety, causing a little worry. If that's you, raise your hand nice and high. Here's what I'm going to do. If you see someone with their hand raised, would you just put their hand on their shoulder? We're going to be the church today, and we're just going to pray for each other, and we're going to believe for God to actually just bring the peace that surpasses understanding in this moment.
And then again, he rephrased, delayed obedience is still disobedience. And that's what we were doing. just delaying marriage until I guess I was ready, because she would have just went with it. I delayed marriage. I was not ready for that. And so I think once we grew as much as God needed us to grow, it was either commit or your assignment here is done. At the end of the day, God gave us free will to choose whichever path we decided to take. I'm not the type to believe that your destiny is written in stone, that God just has this perfect way of knowing your next move, or that he's already written it for you. That is not free will. Free will looks like, here are your options. Pick one. Again, there were 3 options. We both agreed on one. Here are the consequences, here are the terms, here's what you're signing up for. Have fun. I'll be here, but have fun. I'm gonna leave you guys with that. I'm sorry if it got louder. I mean, I'm driving. I never close with advice, but I think my closing advice will be, don't live outside of God's obedience. Because you never know what good thing it will cost you. And it will cost you something. You will have to let go of something. I will carry that lesson forward and teach it. Because it is not an easy pill to swallow.